Okay, let's look at the second problem. Our equation is y equals 2 times cosine 4x minus pi. So they've asked for 4 values. We need to look for the amplitude, period, phase shift, and vertical shift, and then we need to graph one period of this function. So the amplitude always comes from the first number in the equation, which in this case is 2. We always need to take the absolute value, but if it's already positive, we're just going to end up with 2 anyways. Then we have the period. The period is affected by the number that's in front of the x. So what happens is we take 2 pi, because that's the regular period of any trig function, and divide it by that number. So this would simplify to pi over 2. Then phase shift is any number that's inside parentheses with x. We do have parentheses here, and we have a negative pi. So it's going to shift by pi, and then we need to indicate the direction. This is the one that's opposite than what we think. We would think that in the x direction, a positive would mean to the right, but it's always going to be opposite, or a negative would mean to the left, and a positive would mean to the right. In this case, we have a negative. Even though we think it's going to go to the left, it's going to go opposite and go to the right. So this is a right shift, rightward, I guess you could say. Then we have a vertical. This would be a number on the end, but we don't have anything out there, so we do not have any kind of vertical shift. So the next thing to do is to make our graph. So there are a couple of things that we need to take into consideration when we're doing this. We will have, and we have to make our x and y axis, but there are 2 things. First, the period is pi over 2, but then it's going to shift to the right pi, okay? So if we were just doing pi over 2, then we'd mark from 0 to pi over 2 and then cut that in half. Twice, so you'd cut each increment in half. But we need to shift this to the right pi. So we are going to have to add, or shifting to the right by pi. So our new graph, I'm going to come down a little bit. This will still be 0, but we're going to start our graph at pi. And we're going to shift this to the right pi as well. So pi over 2 plus pi, so if that's pi over 1, we need them to have the same denominator. So that's a 2 here and a 2 here. So 1 pi over 2, that will be a 3 pi on top and a 2 on the bottom. So we have 3 pi over 2. So we are looking in between those, okay? So our graph is going to be from pi to 3 pi over 2. Halfway in between pi and 3 pi over 2 is, if you look on your unit circle, 5 pi over 4. Okay, so these are our increments that we're going to use. We are looking at a cosine function. Our cosine is, our cosine function pattern is 1. Sorry about my computer. I don't know what's happening. 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. We want to accommodate 4. We don't have a vertical shift. We've accommodated for phase shift, and we've accommodated for the period. And finally, amplitude. So we're going to multiply this pattern by 2. So we're going to use 2, 0, -2, 0, 2. So if we start at pi, that will be 2. So 1, 2. Halfway in between pi and 5 pi over 4 will be 0. 5 pi over 4 will be -2. And between 5 pi over 4 and 3 pi over 2 will be 0. And at 3 pi over 2 we'll have a +2. So one period of this graph will look like that.